In this quick demonstration, I'll show you 6 examples on how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide using the rules of significant digits. As discussed in part 1 of this series, we looked at these 2 rules and we'll be referring back to them as we complete each question. Starting with the first question, they want us to evaluate and round our answers, and then finally write each answer in scientific notation. Now you'll notice that we have 2 scientific numbers being subtracted here. And both of the scientific numbers have both the same base and power, 10 to the power of 3. With that being said, all you have to do is subtract these numbers and then keep 10 to the power of 3 the way it is. So subtracting 5.822 minus 5.00, we end up with 0.822. Now of course, going back to this rule, when adding or subtracting, your final answer needs to be the same number of decimal places as the number in the equation with the least. So this had 2 decimal places, therefore we should only have 2 decimal places here as well. We end up with 0.82. We're rounding and we're keeping this digit the same and we're discarding that 2. And as I said earlier, it would be times 10 to the power of 3. Now notice this number is not in scientific notation. In order to make it into scientific notation, we need to bring this decimal once to the right. Now, generally, if you bring the decimal to the right, then this number right here goes down. Okay, the exponent goes down. So we end up with 8.2 times 10 to the power of 2. So we've learned a valuable lesson here that if you move the decimal place once over, the exponent of the base 10 will decrease. And the opposite is true for when you move it to the left. Let's move on to question B. Here we have these 3 terms being subtracted and added, and notice that we have the same base, 10 to the power of 3. That means all we have to do is take 8 minus 5 plus 3, which gives us 6 times 10 to the power of 3. It's already in scientific notation, and there's no need to round. In our next example, we'll be dividing 2 numbers, and you'll notice that here we have 10 to the power of 5, and here we have 10 to the power of 2. Now, in order to answer this correctly, we'll start off by dividing 8 and 4 together. 8 has 2 significant digits, 4 has 3. So our final answer when we divide 8 and 4, it should also have 2 significant digits, which goes back to this rule. When multiplying or dividing, the final answer has to have the same number of significant figures as the number in the question with the least. So in our case, this has 2, and our final answer will be 2.0. Now also, keep in mind that here we have 10 to the power of 5 and here we have 10 to the power of 2. Now if you recall the laws of exponents, we have to use the quotient rule here. And the quotient rule says that if the bases are the same, you can subtract the exponents. So here we would have times 10 to the power of 3. This is in scientific notation and all the rounding has been done. Let's move on to D. Here we are asked to add these 2 together. Now we don't have the ideal situation as we did before when we were adding the scientific numbers in part A. Unfortunately, here we have 10 to the power of 3 and here we have 10 to the power of 4. So what we can do from the get-go, and it's summarized below here, is that we can change 10 to the power of 3 into 10 to the power of 4. We can change 10 to the power of 4 into 10 to the power of 3. And by doing that, we can simply add or subtract, in our case add, these 2 numbers together. So what I will do is this 10 to the power of 4, I'll make it 10 to the power of 3. And in order to do that, I'll follow this rule right here, which says a shift of the decimal point of 1 place to the right will decrease the exponent by 1. So if I shift this to the right, this will go down by 1. So we end up with 8.84 times 10 to the power of 3. This one has remained the same. This is the one that I chose to remain the same. I could have just as well brought this up 1 plus 9.2, a shift of the decimal place 1 place to the right. Notice how it went this way, times 10 to the power of 3. And now I can easily add this number and this number together and keep 10 to the power of 3 the same. Let me show you what I mean. 8.84 plus 99.2 gives us an answer of 108.04. 108.04 times 10 to the power of 3. This has to be in scientific notation. Now we have to keep in mind the significant digits. Notice that when we are adding, if you recall this rule right here, your final answer needs the same number of decimal places as the number with the least. Now both of these has 2 decimal places. So our final answer should also have 2. In our case, we would end up with 1.08 times 10 to the power of 3. Moving on to E. Here we have 2 terms being multiplied together. And notice that this is 10 to the power of 3 and this is 10 to the power of 4. I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to take this right here, shift it once to the right, and this goes down to 3. And the reason why I'm doing that now is because now I can keep 10 to the power of 3, and all I have to do really is multiply 2.81 times 79.1, which gives me 222.271. 222.271. Now, of course, we haven't put this in scientific notation, so we end up with 2.22 times 10 to the power of, I'm going to have you think about this for a second. We are moving this decimal place twice to the left. This means that this has to go up by 2. And that's your final answer in scientific notation and perfectly rounded with the correct number of significant digits. Here we have a challenging problem. Notice that we are subtracting these 2 terms and then we're adding these 2. And this right here has 2 decimal places, this has 1, and this has none. So your final answer is going to have 0 decimal places after adding them all up. To do this, we need to make sure that all of these powers are the same. Now, I didn't mention this before, but you can plug this all into your calculator and then come up with the scientific number at the very end. But that's not the point of this tutorial. The point is to be able to do it on your own. What we can do is we can bring this number to 4, and by bringing it to a 4, we'll move this decimal place once, so we end up with 0.4 times 10 to the power of 4, and we're going to leave this the same. And lastly, we can bring this down, and if we bring it down, we have to move the decimal place over to the right, so we have 12.5 times 10 to the power of 4. This is being subtracted to this and then added to this. We'll use our calculator. 12.5 minus 2.9 plus 0.4 gives us a solid answer of 10. 10 times 10 to the power of 4. This needs to be in scientific notation. To put this in scientific notation, we put a decimal place right there, and we end up with 1.0 times 10 to the power of, now notice that this decimal place went once over to the left, so this will go up, and of course we cannot have a decimal point, so our final answer to be 100% accurate should be 1 times 10 to the power of 5. So there you have it. 6 examples on how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide using the rules of significant figures. If you found this tutorial helpful, please support our channel by subscribing or by liking this video. If you have any further questions, visit our website at studyforce.com. We're an online service for students seeking free homework help. See you soon.